Wipro Sustainability Education Program for Schools, Sustainability and Biodiversity. Hi, I'm Meera, and through this online training module, I will guide you to undertake the activities outlined in this second edition of the Sustainability and Biodiversity booklet. The relevant booklet page numbers will be displayed in the green tab above. Through this program, Wipro hopes to strengthen sustainability, thinking, learning, and action in schools. It has a presence in 29 states and 3 union territories. This program is designed as a project-based learning activity and has topics that can be connected to the regular school syllabus. Hence, the work done here can be considered for the CCE, that is, Continuous and Comprehensive Evaluation within the school curriculum. Participation in the Wipro Earthian program will help strengthen concepts in science and social sciences. It will also help with language development. It also provides the teacher and students opportunities for developing important skills like teamwork, observation, recording, documentation, research, analysis, synthesis, reflection, writing, creative writing, and design. This booklet is part of a series of activity-based programs covering 3 thematic areas, which are water, waste, biodiversity, each having a corresponding booklet. Schools undertake activities for 5 months and compete for the Wipro Earthian Awards. All the Wipro Earthian booklets are divided into 3 sections: Part A Electives, and Part B. The Sustainability and the Biodiversity booklet Part A has 5 compulsory activities. Part A Electives has 4 electives, out of which you are required to complete 2. And lastly, Part B has 3 compulsory activities which are based on the learnings of Part A and will require connecting it to the local context and to other domains. Ideally, 3 to 4 weeks will be required for Part A activities and documentation, while Part B will require approximately 2 weeks for completing research and discussion. Part A of this Sustainability and Biodiversity booklet contributes to 60% of the score as it has 7 activities and the remaining 40% is for 3 activities in Part B. In addition to these, the booklet includes various worksheets, card and board games, and information boxes to encourage students to think outside the box. The activities in the book are explained with the help of 4 basic components: objectives, instructions, resources, and reflections. Each activity ends with a reflection section with thought-provoking questions. Let's look at these 4 components in detail. Objectives. This explains why you are doing an activity and what might be learned from it. Instructions. This explains the steps to do the activity. Resources. Provides you with tips and assistance to help carry out the activity. The formats shown under resources are optional. You are welcome to present the information in a style of your choice, but observations and data need to be recorded. Reflection is an important part of the learning experience. Use the questions to discuss, connect with, and explore issues beyond your immediate environment. You can also use the leading questions to ponder on the observations and data collected during the activity. Discuss with people from a wide range of backgrounds such as teachers, classmates, scientists, writers, naturalists, historians, forest officers, parents and grandparents, and experts from universities and government institutions. Now, let's see what role a teacher plays in this. Teachers, as mentors and guides, should help students create their materials but must resist from writing or drawing for them. Before students go outdoors, make sure they understand and agree to follow all safety rules while they are outdoors. Guide your team in the following ways: by providing general guidance, helping students connect the activities with what they study in class, and also foster skills of collaboration, inquiry, and empathy. Facilitating discussions and group reflection sessions so that everyone can share what they understand, raise questions, and together think through what needs to be done. Each activity has leading questions to start off the reflection. Apart from adding your points for the students to reflect on, encourage them to come up with their own views and questions. Encouraging them to talk to their friends, teachers, school administrators, friends and family to get as many perspectives as possible. Building connections to subjects or topics learnt in class, as this will not only help with building a strong understanding, but give clues leading to more reflection. This will come in handy for all activities and Part B of the submission. Part A submissions can be made interesting by presenting them in the form of stories, poems, drawings, videos or graphs. Part B is to connect what you learn about biodiversity in Part A to the local context and to other domains. With the help of guidelines for writing project reports, students can complete the essay by including pictures, sketches and photographs. While the internet may be used for research, text and diagrams downloaded should not be included unaltered in the submissions. Such materials should be presented in the students' own words and sketches redrawn by them. Citations and references to books, interviews, etc. can be provided wherever required. It is the quality of the learning and not quantity that is important. So, what makes a good report? It is original. It is interesting and easy to read and understand. Its purpose and objectives are clear. The structure of the report can be as follows. Title. It can be catchy, meaningful, and as short as possible. Introduction. It should link to the title as this gives a background of the project. You can write about why you have undertaken the project. Objectives. What are you trying to achieve with this project? What kind of gaps in knowledge are you trying to fill? You can list down specific objectives. Study area. Write about the location where you have undertaken this project. Draw or stick a map of your state or district and mark the location on the map. Now that we have spoken about the structure of the report, let's talk about the methods that you can use for presenting the same. Be as creative as you'd like while presenting your reports. Methods. Write a complete description of precisely what was done to collect and interpret the data. For example, primary data collection. Through direct observations and documentation, you can write about how you went about documenting what you saw. You can also include interviews, mention about the number of people interviewed, their background, gender, how the interviews were recorded, etc. Then mention the secondary data collected, books, articles, web search, etc. Include any relevant data sheets in this section. Results. Once you finish writing primary and secondary data collection, you can follow the write-up with the results. Start with general results and narrow down to specifics. This is the section where you display your data. Include historical timeline, seasonal calendar, rich picture, and any other tables or graphs. Use subheadings wherever appropriate. Discussions. After that, let's move on to the next method, discussions. What is it that you learned from the project? It should be tied back to your objectives. Start by rereading your objectives and the main results. Note down the main messages you want to communicate. Start the discussion with the most important points. Please note, do not discuss results that were not presented in the results section. Once that is done, explain the constraints, what situations, if any, prevented you from achieving your objectives. Remember the following points while doing the activities and electives. While trying to make the documentation creative, please do not forget the core tasks or requirements as outlined in parts A and B. Attempt 2 elective activities out of the 4 mentioned here in the activity book. Remember to capture as much data as possible from reflections. Note that compile submissions for all the activities into a single PDF or Word file, including links to audio and video. Submit the PDF or Word file as a soft copy. How much time will this require? Ideally, Part A activities and documentation should take each team around 3 to 4 weeks, requiring approximately 2 to 3 hours a week. Teachers can assist teams in getting free time from classes to do these activities. Part B requires research and discussions. Research work can be done in free periods or outside of school hours by taking the help of teachers and parents. Earthian is Wipro's sustainability education program for schools and colleges. Through this module, we help students develop an interdisciplinary understanding of the topic and provide multiple perspectives to help make sustainability education more meaningful. By meeting these objectives, educational institutions, their educators and students will be better equipped to make sustainable choices. Before we begin, let us understand why we are so concerned about biodiversity. We are losing biodiversity at a rate faster than ever before in the history of our planet. Scientists say that more than 20,000 plants and animals are on the brink of disappearing forever. Unfortunately, the current extinction rates have been accelerated by 1,000 times because of human beings. Wherever we go, we observe living things. Biodiversity is all these things. It is life. Biodiversity is a combination of the terms biological and diversity. Scientists use the term biodiversity to describe the connections and variety of living things in a given area. This area can be as small as a puddle of water or as big as the whole Earth. A healthy, complex and stable ecosystem has a lot of different kinds of organisms. One of the most important things to keep in mind about biodiversity is that it is not just plants and animals, but the connection between all the living things on the planet. This connection is important to all of us because it provides us with a lot of resources and services that we need to live and thrive on this planet. So let's understand more about biodiversity in detail. Living things collaborate and compete with one another to stay alive and reproduce in a wide range of environmental conditions. This has led to an incredible diversity of life on Earth. Biodiversity can be defined in various ways, from genetic similarities to specific classifications to global habitats. It can include organisms from the largest whales to the smallest microbes. Biodiversity can be explored at 3 levels: ecosystem diversity, species diversity, and genetic diversity. To understand biodiversity, all of these 3 aspects need to be explored. Genetic diversity refers to the diversity or genetic variability within a particular species. Look at the puppies in these pictures. Do they all look same? No, because genetic diversity gives rise to different traits among individuals of the same species. Remember that even though they all have genes that make them different, they also share genes that make them very similar. When species are lost in large numbers, their genetic diversity is also lost. Species diversity is a number of different species living in a particular location and their corresponding abundance. For example, these images are of 3 living things that are distinct from each other. They have their own unique set of physical traits, such as shape, size, and structure. Here, living things are not classified by genes, but into small biological units called species. The number of species of plants and animals that are present in a region represents the area's species diversity. A species is defined as a group of organisms capable of interbreeding and producing fertile offspring. Did you know that there are approximately 1.8 million different species that have been classified on Earth, and many species are yet to be discovered? You can find examples of species diversity in the Wipro Earthian-Sustainability and Biodiversity booklet. Finally, we have ecosystem diversity, which refers to the different kinds of ecosystems that can be found on Earth. The interrelationship of both biotic and abiotic factors determines an ecosystem. Each ecosystem is physically different and is composed of a diverse set of biotic, living or once living, factors such as birds, ants, trees, and abiotic, non-living factors such as air, water, and soil. Ecosystems need not always be on a large scale. A pool of water, complete with organisms that can sustain themselves, is a tiny ecosystem. A healthy ecosystem is made up of a complex web of contributions made by a wide range of organisms. India is exceptionally rich in ecosystem diversity. Distinctive ecosystems are made up of landscapes such as tropical forests, dry deciduous forests, grasslands, deserts, mountains, etc., as well as aquatic ecosystems such as rivers, lakes, and a number of marine ecosystems. They also include areas that have been modified by humans, like farmland and cities. Biodiversity is not distributed evenly on Earth. Plant and animal diversity depends on climate, altitude, soils, and the presence of other species. The more diverse an ecosystem is, the better equipped it is to deal with change. If a species dies out or a new one moves in, a diverse ecosystem will be able to maintain balance. Genetically diverse populations are more likely to survive and adapt to changing environments. If biodiversity is low, ecosystems are less likely to bounce back from devastating changes, such as natural disasters like drought, floods, and diseases. 17 countries have been identified as the world's mega diverse countries, and India is one of them. India is home to nearly 8% of the global biodiversity. It is estimated that 18% of Indian plants are endemic to the country and found nowhere else in the world. There are places on Earth that are both biologically rich and deeply threatened. These are hotspots of diversity, the richest and most important ecosystems in the world. Amongst the 36 biodiversity hotspots in the world, India represents 4 of these hotspots: the Himalayas, Western Ghats. The Indo-Burma region consists of northeast India south of Brahmaputra. Sunderland includes Nicobar Islands. Hence, it is a matter of pride along with a great responsibility to maintain this biodiversity, as it is essential for sustainable development. The Earth has a natural process of warming itself by atmospheric gases called greenhouses such as carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and methane. However, its balance in the atmosphere is being disrupted by additional greenhouse gases emitted due to human activity causing warmer temperatures that has led to a change in climate. A warmer Earth is leading to a rise in sea level, changes in weather patterns, and disruptions to the lives of all living creatures. That is why it is extremely important for us to take our environment seriously now more than ever. Now that we have a better understanding of the importance of conservation, let's dive straight into the program and help students learn about biodiversity. The program is divided into 3 parts. Part A1 and Part B are compulsory, while Part A2 is elective. In Part A, Section 1, Understanding Biodiversity, we will focus more on the environment as a shared space. To explore biodiversity in our surrounding schoolyard, to connect to local biodiversity using various senses, to understand ecological concepts such as symbiotic relationships, prey-predator relationships, camouflage and mimicry. We will also conduct biodiversity investigation through various surveys and individual activities. We will then review everything we have learnt in this section. In Activity 1, Environment as a Shared Space, students will discover and observe biodiversity in their school area or ground. This activity will help them become familiar with local plants and animals and will enable them to understand the meaning of the word environment. Students will also understand how plants and animals change the environment around them. Before undertaking this activity, choose a good time of the day to go out and explore. Morning or evening when it is not too hot is ideal. Note down the date, start time, season and the weather. Walk around the schoolyard as a group and document the biodiversity in the following 3 steps. In schools which do not have green or open spaces, surveys can be undertaken indoors. You can refer to the Hidden Housemates bingo sheets mentioned in the Wipro Sustainability and Biodiversity booklet 2022 for ideas. There are 2 sub-activities in Activity 1. First is Biodiversity Investigation and the second is Nature Sign, which is an individual activity. The part 1 of this activity has been divided into 2 surveys, 2 fun activities and ends with reflections, which should be completed in around 2 to 3 hours. Note, fun activities are not considered for scoring, but you can take them to evaluate the better understanding of the topic. To begin with, first ask students to walk around the schoolyard as a group to record and document the diversity of plants in that area. Take note of any trees, shrubs, herbs, or climbers that look interesting. When you find a plant that looks interesting, make notes or take a picture of it and mark its location on the map. You can either draw and write a few words directly on the chart paper or draw separately, cut the picture and paste it on the map. During the time you sketch or look at the plant, write about any insects that you see. If you see that the leaves have been cut or eaten, look more closely at how they were cut or eaten. Have you noticed a flower-like layer growing on the bark of a tree, stone, or a wall? Lichens are unusual creatures. A lichen may look like a plant, but it is not a single organism. Lichens are known to be very sensitive to environmental changes and therefore are important indicators of pollution and climate change. There are a lot of wow facts similar to this. Refer to the Wipro Sustainability and Biodiversity booklet to know more. Next, look for a plant with a special feature, such as spikes or thorns, interesting color or shape, one that climbs up a structure or crawls along the ground. Before you end part 1 of this activity, students should complete their observation notes. Ensure that they make notes of whatever they have observed. In part 2 of this activity, students will visit the same site and walk around the schoolyard looking for evidence of animals. If you notice a bird, stop quietly for a few minutes and watch. To observe insects and other invertebrates, explore the wall, the ground, rocks, leaf litter, bark of a tree, look closely at plants, and so on. Also, don't forget to look for an animal which is camouflaged in color and in shape. Camouflage is the ability of an organism to blend with its surrounding, while mimicry is the ability of one species to imitate the color or behavior of another species. When you are exploring your school campus, make sure to search for the animal which is hiding in the leaves or which could be fooling you by pretending to be an element in nature. If you have a magnifying glass, it will be useful to look at small animals in detail. Small wildlife like insects, spiders, and geckos hide in cracks in the building. Don't forget to look for toads and frogs, snails and slugs in wet areas. When you spot an animal, make observations. Ask questions: why, how, what, and make connections. Document the animal you saw through drawings, words, or numbers. The next part of this activity is about wild animal homes. Have you ever wondered, where do wild animals live? What kind of dwelling places or houses do they call home? Let's find out. Make a list of wild animal homes you know of. Explore both indoors and outdoors as a team to look for places where wild animals live. If you spot an animal and watch it long enough, you may be able to see where its home is. It could be a bird's nest in the tree, twig, a spider's web, or a termite mound. Now, without getting too close to this possible home, watch for signs of activity. Document animal homes through sketching and writing notes on a different chart paper or you could use plain sheets of paper and turn them into a booklet. Note down details such as what material has been used, which animal does it belong to, the location, is the home hidden or exposed, etc. Think of all the wild animals that must be living inside your home, sharing the space with you and your family. Discuss if they have their own homes within your home. Find a minimum of 5 animal homes belonging to 5 different species. Lastly, discuss the students' observation and allow them to share their learnings. Focus the discussion on the following topics: the diversity seen in the area, the relationships between the organisms seen, the role played by each organism in maintaining the environment, and which organisms, according to them, were important for biodiversity to flourish. In the final part of this activity, check if you spotted the following species in your schoolyard based on the biodiversity survey and investigation. Refer to the chart mentioned in the booklet, mention the name of species, how many of them did you come across, and the description of the species and habitat. Finally, students can complete the activity by writing a summary of your reflections in a short paragraph or in the form of bullet points. Essay-type submission is not necessarily required. Try to include photographs if possible or make a drawing. Students should share their ideas on what can be termed as environment by giving examples. They should be guided to realize that the environment is a shared space which is dynamic in nature. Describe what you have observed as detailed as possible. For example, how many different species of plants and animals did you notice in the schoolyard? Did the school have green areas? If yes, which was the largest type of green area? Tree cover, grass patch, garden with shrubs or other? Which area in the school had the most diversity of species? And others as mentioned in the booklet. Please note, teachers must encourage such discussions and keep steering the students towards understanding that the environment is a dynamic space in which different organisms by their living activity bring about changes, even while benefiting from those changes. This is an individual activity which can be done in around 30 to 40-minute duration. Undertake this activity at your house, spending time in the garden, balcony or terrace, or if you have access to safe places like a park or a farm nearby. Take an A4 size sheet of blank paper, follow the instructions as shown in the illustration or diagram. Mark each side of the booklet with 7 symbols: eye sight, ear sound, nose smell, tongue taste, hand touch, brain thoughts or memories, heart feelings, and the 8th side is left blank. Explore your surroundings, watch the sky, listen to calls, sit still, take in the smells. If you find any familiar plants, try to taste the leaves or fruits or flowers. Avoid tasting if you're not familiar with the plants, as several species of plants can cause allergies. Keep all your senses, sight, smell, hearing, touch, and taste alert, and record on the sign under the appropriate headings. Use sketches and words to record your observations. For example, in the sheet with the nose symbol, write if you smelled something and how did it make you feel, or what thoughts occurred to you when you smelled the object. Try to draw from where the smell came from, if it was from a plant or an animal. Once all the 7 sides are filled up, on the blank side of the sign, attempt this creative writing activity. From all the biodiversity observations you have made so far, either at school or home, choose an element in nature that you felt close to and write the following. In the first line, you may mention name of the chosen nature element, subject or noun. In the second line, 2 words describing its qualities, adjectives. The third line should have 3 words describing its actions, verbs. In the fourth one, write 4 words describing how you feel about the subject you have chosen, a phrase, sentence, or expression. And the fifth and the final one should replace the first noun or rename your chosen subject, synonym. Once you are done writing as per the above instructions, make any refinements to your poem. This activity focuses on helping students understand the concepts of environment and biodiversity. Some important questions to reflect on during this activity are: Was there anything unique that you came across that you had never noticed before? What kind of feelings did this activity bring about? Do you think that the wild animals you have spotted so far use their senses the way you did? Which of the senses may be most useful? What plants and animals would you like to see in your school campus that do not exist at present? In Activity 2, Species Diversity in Our Backyard, students will investigate species diversity and abundance in Microhabitat to understand that species diversity differs in different habitats. They will also understand human impact on biodiversity of an area and will learn sampling techniques, biodiversity monitoring, and to encourage scientific thinking. Activity 2 is further divided into two parts. 2.1 is about comparison between microhabitats. A microhabitat is a small home environment for plants and animals. Examples are a bush, a garden, individual trees, a pond, area under a pile of rocks, etc. For this activity, you will need 4 small pencil-sized sticks, ruler, scale or measuring tape, string or twine, a notebook and pen or pencil to note down observations. Handheld lens or magnifying glass, which is optional. It should take around 45 minutes per observation to finish it. Find an area in your schoolyard or outside where there is a fair amount of vegetation. Pick a small part of this area which has plants or leaf litter. Measure and mark an area with sides of about 1 to 3 square feet to mark the boundaries for your study. Push the 4 sticks into the soil at 4 corners of the square and tie the string around it to make a box of equal sides. Before beginning the observations, note down the date, time and features of the microhabitat, location and what the surroundings look like. Sit down and closely observe all the living organisms present inside the square for about 15 minutes and make an inventory. Record the number of each type of plant, amphibian, reptile, insect and other life forms within the plot. Use a magnifying lens if required to observe some of the smaller life forms. Be careful of animals that may sting or plants that may cause allergic reactions. Try not to disturb the plot much. Use the data table given below to record your observations. Add as many rows to the table as you need. Remember that, as the intention is to observe the diversity of life, it is not necessary that you should know the name of each species you see. You could record different species as insect 1, insect 2, or grass 1, grass 2, etc., along with a short description and drawing. Give each species you record a letter. For example, label them A, B, C, D, and so forth. This will be useful later to create a graph. After you have listed the animal or plant species, count and record the number of individuals of each species and note down in the last column. This is called species abundance. Pick a second microhabitat. This time find vegetation growing above ground, like on the trunk of a tree, on a fallen log, above the rock, etc., which may consist of moss, ferns, live worts growing on them. Mark a square that is the same size as the square in your previous microhabitat. Similarly, investigate and record all the animals and plants you notice in the second data table titled Microhabitat. Repeat the observations in each microhabitat at least 2 to 3 times, since this increases the chances of finding more animals using this habitat. Use the data you collected to display your findings visually using a bar graph. Prepare 2 separate graphs for 2 different microhabitats. Enter data from column 1, species label, on the x-axis and the data from the last column, total number of individuals, on the y-axis. Establish the value for each line on the y-axis, for example in the range of 5, 10, 15, 20 or 50, 100, 150, 200. Finally, write a summary of your reflections in a short paragraph or in the form of bullet points. The part 2 of this activity is about comparing avian, bird diversity in disturbed and less disturbed habitat. You will need 2 shallow water bowls, clay or metal, not more than 2 inches, 5 cm deep. A few pebbles or a stone, place them in the bowl of water, regional, age-appropriate bird field guides, notebook and pen or pencil to record observations. Choose 2 different spots to place the bird bath. Place one bird bath in a less disturbed area, preferably surrounded by vegetation which birds can use as a cover. The second bird bath is to be placed in an open area where there is a lot of human movement and no vegetation cover. Remember that both the bird baths should be placed at a safe height so the birds are safe from cats. It may take a few days for the birds to spot the bird bath and feel safe enough to being using it. Before starting your experiment, you have to find out what time of the day the birds prefer to visit the bird bath. Therefore, for the first few days, watch the bird bath from a safe distance at different times of the day. Once you have an idea which time of the day birds prefer to visit the bird bath, fix this time for monitoring the bird baths every day. Form 2 teams and spend about 30 minutes watching the 2 bird baths at the same time from a safe distance so as to not disturb the birds visiting the bird bath. As you watch the birds drink water or bathe in the bird bath, you should be able to get a close look at them if you stay still and quiet. If possible, use a pair of binoculars so that you can see the birds clearly. Keep the bird guide handy so that you can identify the different species of birds that visit your water bowl. If you cannot identify a bird, write as unidentified number 1, unidentified number 2, and so on, and describe how it looks. Document the species of birds that visit the bird bath in the table below. Ensure that the bird bath is cleaned every morning and filled with fresh water. Algal or fungal formation should be prevented in the bird bath in order to prevent wild birds from contracting diseases. Calculate the species richness of each spot by counting the total number of species, not individuals, observed in each spot. Compile the species abundance, total number of individuals for each species, data in the format as shown below to make comparisons between the 2 sites. Following this activity, students should write a summary of their reflections in a short paragraph or in the form of bullet points. Discuss which site had the greatest number of species. Was one habitat dominated by a few species, or if there were more equal number of several species? If you notice that few species of birds were visiting one of the bowls, what may be the reason? Based on this experiment, do you think that human activities have any effect on birds? In Activity 3, our objectives are to understand interconnectedness in nature, to learn about services that humans derive from nature, to explore the connection between biodiversity, people, and culture. Humans gain many benefits from the biotic and abiotic components of an ecosystem. These benefits are called ecosystem services. Our well-being and long-term survival depend on the conservation of biological resources, so it is important to keep them safe. In this activity, we are going to play a hopscotch game that contains 8 blocks and players must hop from one block to another. The player must hop on 1 foot in single squares and land on 2 feet in squares placed side by side. While getting ready for this game, print the enclosed game sheets and cut the game cards, total of 8 cards. Form 2 teams. Choose who will play first by tossing a coin or other methods familiar to you. Draw the grid on the ground using chalk or scratched out in the mud with numbers marked inside the squares. Place the cards in their respective squares. The flat stone or a tile piece will be used to toss within the grid. Now, let's understand how to play this game. Members of each team should stand in a straight line. First, one member from Team A must go forward to play. Standing behind the starting line, the player has to throw the flat stone in block number 1. He or she has to then hop over the first block to the second block and continue hopping to the 7th and 8th block, then turn around. Hop back to the second block, pause and pick up the card as well as the stone. Hop in the first block and return to the starting line. The player should then read out the text on the card to both the teams. One player for Team A and one from Team B should simultaneously run to complete the action described in the card. The remaining team members stay in place. The member who finds the object first gets 1 point for his or her team. Second, One member from Team B steps forward, tosses the stone in block number 2, hops around the grid as instructed in step 1 and picks up the card in block 2 and returns to the starting line. As in step 1, the contents of the card are read out and the next set of players, one from each, run to do what is instructed. The teams should appoint different sets of members to carry out the action so everyone gets an opportunity to play. Now third, it's Team A's turn again. The player tosses the stone in block number 3 and does a full loop. The two teams take turns to toss the stone and this continues until the last card in block number 8 is picked up and the action relevant to that card is completed. The player who is unable to toss the stone into the right block or steps on the line while hopping will miss the turn. The chance goes to the other team. The team with maximum points is considered the winner. After the hopscotch game is completed, you can play the next game, the jigsaw puzzle. Read the stories mentioned under the jigsaw puzzle and join all the game cards together to find the species mentioned in the story. There are 2 stories with 1 jigsaw puzzle each. The first one is about stars of the rainforest and the second one is about celebrities of migration. Did you know migration is the seasonal movement of animals from one place to another? Bird migration is one of nature's great wonders. It is the annual movement of all or part of the population from their breeding grounds, place where they reproduce, to non-breeding grounds in search of food. Migratory birds typically travel from regions of extreme climate to regions of moderate climates and back. End Activity 3 with writing a summary of your reflections in a short paragraph or in the form of bullet points. With the help of points that are mentioned in the reflection section of Activity 3 of Wipro Sustainability and Biodiversity booklet. In Activity 4, we will explore biodiversity, food, livelihoods and climate. As part of this activity, you will undertake interviews that are qualitative by nature. Qualitative interviews consist of conversations, but they differ from normal, everyday conversations in several ways. Qualitative interviews take the form of a two-way conversation with discussion and follow-up questions on each point, rather than a question and answer session with no discussion. The interviewee should do most of the talking. Your task is to encourage them to talk openly and freely, yet stay more or less on the subject with as little direction or interruption as possible. This activity is further divided into 3 parts: prepare for the interview, conducting the interview, interpret the findings. Let's look at it in detail. Step 1. Prepare for the interview. Choose the communities you will interview and how many people from each community you will interview. Prepare a list of guiding questions you would like to ask and get feedback from your teacher. Determine an approximate duration of the interview so you can inform the interviewees in advance. Decide how you are going to record the interview, taking notes, audio recording, or both. Discuss and decide if each of you will conduct the interview individually or meet the interviewees together as a team. If conducting an interview as a team, decide beforehand who is going to introduce and begin the interview and who will end it, who will ask which question, and who will take responsibility of recording. Contact the people you wish to interview and take appointments for a visit unless you are requesting people spontaneously on the street, field, park, or other outdoor spaces. Before starting the interview, ensure that you have clearly explained the purpose of the interview, that you will be recording the answers and you will be sharing the answers with others in your school and beyond. Ask the person whether they have understood this and whether they consent to be interviewed. Start the interview only if they clearly indicate their consent, else approach someone else. Step 2. Conducting the interview. Find people in your locality belonging to at least 2 of the following groups. Local community members who are directly dependent on local biodiversity for livelihood, example, fisher folk, fuel wood collectors, shell collectors, tribals who use wild plants for consumption and sale, basket or mat weavers, honey collectors, thatch roof makers, etc. A farmer or family that owns livestock, member of the forest department, conservation NGO or activists involved in conservation of biodiversity, owner of a small-scale business unit who is indirectly dependent on local biodiversity, example, local vegetable vendor, flower vendor, tender coconut seller, gardener, homestay owner, fishmonger, boatman, bricklane owner. Interview at least 2 to 3 people from each of the groups. Find people belonging to different age groups and gender. Interviewing several individuals or groups will capture variation in experience. For example, interview people belonging to your parents' generation as well as grandparents' generation, as their knowledge and experience will be different. Also, the perspective of women and men will vary, and interviewing both will give you a complete view of the topic you are trying to understand. There is no upper limit for the number of interviews you wish to conduct. Talk to the interviewees individually or as a group. The less you direct the conversation and the more you gain the trust of the interviewee, the more accurate the information that emerges. In other words, the more closely it will reflect the interviewee's knowledge, attitudes, and opinions. Here are a few interviewing techniques that you can follow. Greet the interviewee. State the aim of the interview. Ask for consent to record and click photographs. Listen carefully and give them enough time to respond. Once you have covered all your questions, ask if there is anything they would like to add or to ask. Thank them for their time. For other practical tips, please refer to page 61 of the booklet. Step 3. Interpret the findings. Organize your data. Make comparisons of knowledge and attitude across professions, gender, and age group. Once this activity completes, students can reflect on: has there been a big change to the kind of food consumed and sourced? How has this affected the health and nutrition of the people? How has this affected local biodiversity? Have there been major shifts in livelihood options over the years? How has the shift affected people's dependence on local biodiversity? Students can refer to the booklet for more questions like these and write a summary of their reflection in a short paragraph or bullet points. In Activity 5, you need to work on various case studies. The activity is divided into 3 major steps. There are 5 case studies from different geographical locations and ecosystems. They are: Case Study 1 is about addressing conflict between people and wildlife in the Himalayas. Case Study 2, Conservation of Great Indian Bustard in Rajasthan. Case Study 3, Restoring the Mangroves in Sundarbans. Case Study 4, Glathia Bay. Case Study 5, RA, a unique urban forest, Mumbai. Pick any one case study from the booklet and follow the following steps to complete the activity. Step 1. Prepare a mini-drama based on the chosen case study. After you have rehearsed sufficiently, perform in front of your class members and teachers on a designated day. Hold a discussion about the issues that have been presented in the case study for about 10 to 15 minutes. Cover the topics such as: what were the biodiversity threats you came across in your case study? Who was responsible for inducing the threat? Who benefits the most from the proposed activity that threatens biodiversity? Which others were negatively affected by the threat? What activities or interventions took place to counter this threat? You can also refer to the booklet for more questions that you can discuss. Instructions for preparing for the mini-drama. First, read the case study, discuss among the team, and filter out the message to convey. Pick what events you want to act out from the case study, keeping it simple such that the drama can fit within 10 minutes. Second, list the characters, example people, plants, and animals from the case study. You can also mention community members, plant or animal species being represented, government employees, wildlife biologists, NGO workers, media personnel, and so on. Third is to take on the role you are comfortable playing and rehearse. And lastly, before you perform, introduce to the audience what event or topic is being played and what roles are being played by whom. Step 2. Along with your class members, think of a similar biodiversity threat that you may be aware of in your area. Come up with an action plan or campaign to reduce the threat and protect the species or ecosystem. Use a flip chart or blackboard to note down your discussion points. Step 3. Compile the discussion points and create a poster of the new case study. Include title, location, threats, action points, people involved, and possible outcomes. To submit your reflection for this activity, you should record a video of the performance as well as the discussion. Submit a video clip and poster of the new case study. Phone recording will be sufficient to record the video for this activity. You can use these as indicative questions to discuss the case study from your area and to design the poster. What were the actions and circumstances that led to the main threats to biodiversity in your area? Who is responsible for the threat? Who is the most affected by the threat? And who benefits the most if biodiversity in your areas is lost? What possible solutions would you propose to reduce or stop the biodiversity threat? Of the solutions you propose, think about what actions can be undertaken by individuals or groups of citizens. Which ones need legal interference? Will your proposed solution have short-term or long-term effects? Now we move on to Part A elective section. Pick any two of the 4 electives. The electives, which is Section 2 of Part A, is about understanding biodiversity in our environment. It has 4 topics, of which only 2 have to be selected. The students will have fun doing this hands-on activity where they either paint a wall mural or create a habitat for insects. They can also create a pond ecosystem or set up wild edible plants, WEP garden. This activity is divided into 3 major steps, beginning with data collection. For this, speak to elderly family members, neighbors, and schoolmates and gather information about WEP that they have consumed. If the person you speak to is aware of any dish that can be prepared using the WEP, take down the recipe. The second step is to set up the garden. Discuss with the person in charge of the garden or the kitchen in your school about starting a kitchen garden of WEP. With the help of your teacher and the person in charge, shortlist a few WEP from the list you have gathered that can be grown in the school. Sow seeds or saplings of the selected WEP from their natural habitat. You may find some plants right in your backyard and start a kitchen garden with the help of your teachers and school staff. If your school does not have an outdoor space, grow the WEP in containers. The third and last step is monitoring. Notice their growth, the kind of flowers they produce, the pollinators that visit the plants, type of seeds produced, and how they are dispersed and other information. Also note which other animals consume the WEP. Document your observations through sketches and notes. Encourage other students and staff in the school to observe and monitor the WEP garden. Lastly, write your reflection based on the activity you did. Refer to the points mentioned in the booklet, for example, how many people you spoke with were aware of WEP. Did you find any difference between those who knew about WEP and those who didn't? Perhaps based on gender, age, social class. Amongst the people you spoke to, if someone had never consumed WEP, what could be the reason? And so on. The second elective is Biodiversity Wall Mural. A mural is a piece of artwork painted or applied directly on a wall, ceiling, or other permanent substrate. The objective of this activity is to paint a wall mural which helps learn a skill using locally available natural material. To understand and appreciate folk and community art as well as local flora and fauna, to explore the types of soil around you, to facilitate cooperation between students, teachers, and other school members. This activity is divided into 4 steps. First, preparing the design. Based on Activity 1 and Activity 2, choose a few plant and animal species seen in your surroundings that you would like to depict on the wall. On a large sheet of paper, create a composition, which is an arrangement of the visual elements, by drawing the outline of animals and plants you have chosen. You can include decorative elements too in your composition. If you are confident about drawing directly on the wall, you could do so. If not, draw each of the animals and plants on a large scale on separate sheets of paper. Cut the outline and use it as a stencil to trace the drawing on the wall. Second, preparing the wall. Choose an indoor or outdoor wall which is sheltered from rain. Clean and wash the wall using brush and water to remove dust and dirt. Apply a layer of cow dung, mud plaster or lime to form a base layer of uniform color. Apply this to the cleaned wall using a roller, big brush or a piece of cloth and wait for it to dry. Third, preparing the color. Collect different types of soil in and around the school. Sieve the soil to get very fine powder. Mix this fine powder with varying amounts of water to prepare the color. Soils differ in their color, texture, particle size, viscosity, and composition depending on the location, climate, and terrain. Last step is creating the mural. Involve as many students and other school members as possible to paint the mural so it becomes a community mural. Once the students are done with murals, refer to the reflection section in the booklet and try to cover the answers of the questions mentioned there. Example: how many types of soils did you collect to paint the mural? What kind of plants were growing on these different kinds of soil? Did you collect the topsoil or did you have to dig deeper? In this activity, we'll build a home for insects. Students will need recyclable stuff like broken bricks and tiles, stone chippings, broken plant pots, corrugated cardboard, broken PVC pipes, natural materials, dead wood, dry leaves, loose bark, hollow plant stems such as old bamboo canes, or holes drilled into blocks of wood. Drilled holes should be at least 6 inches long, which is about 15 centimeters. You can choose an even surface where you get good sunlight as well as shade to build this. Some invertebrates like cool, damp conditions, while others prefer the sun. Let's step by step build the house for insects. Start by laying some bricks on the ground as sturdy corners. Leave some spaces in between the bricks for creatures to move in. Then, place a few wooden planks or logs on top of your bricks. Fill in the gaps with leaf litter, straw, stack of sticks, bamboo, logs with holes and other materials. And finally, add a roof to ward off the rain and sun. Provide all sorts of different nooks, crevices, tunnels for the insects to feel safe. When you are developing the garden for insects, created by planting herbs, shrubs, and climbers that attract insects, either in pots or on the ground around the insect home. Try to grow as many local and wild varieties of plants as possible. Source them from your backyard, an empty plot, or anywhere plants grow wild. This gives you an opportunity to observe which plant attracts what kind of insects. Avoid any form of chemical fertilizers or pesticides for your plants. Instead, use organic manure. As and when you visit the insect habitat, make observations of the home as well as the garden and fill in your insect journal. Look closely for eggs, larvae, and adult insects during your observation period. Note down the information at the insect home like mentioned in the booklet. Similarly, note down observation of the plants in the insect garden. While taking care of your insect habitat, keep your insect garden healthy. Make sure plants are not dry or wilting. Water them daily or on alternate days as they require. Observe pupae and caterpillars without touching and leave them as they are and where they are. Other than insects, if you find other creatures like spiders, millipedes, amphibians using the habitat, observe them too. Encourage your friends at school to make observations. Avoid handling and harming any creature that you notice in the habitat. Work on the reflection once you are done with the activity. Activity 4 is about building a pond ecosystem. Ponds are rich ecosystems. Even a small pond can be home to an interesting range of wildlife, such as dragonflies, damselflies, frogs, beetles, and fishes. Birds visit them to drink water and bathe. Adding a pond is one of the best things you can do for wildlife in your schoolyard. You will need mini ponds that can be constructed from a whole range of containers with wide necks, so wildlife can go in and out to create this. Be creative and look for containers that you can upcycle. Disused wheelbarrow, bathtub, wash basin, washing bowl, sink, recycled tire tube, metal tub, etc. Or buy a wide-mouthed plant pot from a plant nursery. Natural materials, old bricks, rocks, stones, gravel and sand, dead wood branch, sand, PVC pond liner, these are optional. Choose a spot in the school ground, terrace or balcony. Your pond will want light but not full sunlight all day to build this. Let's look into how to build this pond. Dig a hole and sink your container, or just have it sitting on top. If the container isn't waterproof, then add a piece of pond liner. Add a layer of gravel, rocks and sand. Use stones to create a range of depths and a slope for creatures to climb in and out. If your container is not sunk into the ground, use branches to make a ramp from the ground outside for animals like frogs and toads that cannot fly. Fill your pond with water. Use collected rainwater if possible to fill your pond, as treated tap water contains chemicals. Adding plants. Plants are an important part of the pond as they add oxygen to the water and provide food and shelter for wildlife. Plant aquatic plants in small pots or containers and place them inside the pond, or if planting directly, fix them into the gravel and sand at the bottom of the pond. Place small stones to stabilize tall plants without damaging them. Now it's time to wait and watch. The wildlife will come to your pond on its own. Keep a record of what you see and write about it as often as possible. Look for the eggs and larvae of insects and amphibians during your observation time. Note down the information like date, duration of observation, weather, and other details as mentioned in the booklet. Make sure to take care of your pond. Also, do not pick up animals from natural ponds or lakes to introduce them here. You can end this activity by writing reflections that cover the following points. Where did you set up the pond in your school and why did you choose this spot? How or where did you source the container and natural materials for your pond? Where did you source the aquatic plants for the mini pond? List the species planted in the pond. Part B requires a different approach from Part A. The purpose of Part B is to connect what you learn about biodiversity in Part A to the local context and to other domains. Part B should be submitted in the form of a report within which you should include the timeline, seasonal calendar, and vision for the future. The report can be made attractive and engaging by using drawings, photographs, charts, or graphs. The questions given in Part B reflection are not for submission. In the discussion section, you should inform us in your own words what your learnings have been, which will not be possible by merely giving answers to the questions that are provided for guidance. The teacher coordinator could play a key role in facilitating this exercise, making sure that the team covers a wide range of views and provides sufficient data points to support their arguments. The most serious problem while writing a report is too much description, too little critical analysis and reflection. What makes a good report? It is original, it is interesting and easy to read and understand. Its purpose and objectives are clear. You can follow the structure of the report as mentioned in the booklet. There are a total of 3 compulsory activities in Part B, starting with historical timeline activity, which you can complete in 3 steps. Step 1. Construct a table as shown in the booklet to collect data. Step 2. gather information from individuals or groups and fill in the table. Depending on the age group of the person you are speaking to, ask her or him to recollect how the area or locality or village was about 20 years ago and then 40 years ago. If you are talking to elderly people older than 60, you can ask them to describe the area when they were children. Remember, you can also follow the points mentioned in the booklet, which may be helpful for you to gather information. Step 3. Using the information you have gathered, create a flowchart of the historical timeline. Take a large chart paper and draw a horizontal line in the center. Divide this line to mark the dates from the past to the present. Write down the events that occurred during each time period in the space immediately above and below the line. Use additional space to write down the effects these events have had on the local ecosystems and communities. The second activity is about seasonal map. Seasons are an integral part of biodiversity. Seasonal maps helps explore what happens during the year and when it happens. They reflect the perception of the local people regarding seasonal variations on a wide range of items. You will need chart paper, scale, compass to draw circles, colors, glue for this activity. Step 1. Construct a table of 7 columns and at least 5 rows. In the cells of the first column, list all the themes and categories you wish to gather seasonal information for, such as weather, flowering and fruiting of local trees, wildlife sightings, wild edibles consumed, etc. In the cells across the top row of the next 6 columns, write the names of the seasons as they are known locally. Step 2. Gather information from individuals or groups. Starting at the beginning of the year, for each theme or category, ask respondents a list of questions that helps you gather information about local biodiversity based on the seasons of occurrence. Respondents may not be able to provide information for all the seasons and all the categories. Collecting information from several respondents will help you compile the information for the entire year. In addition, the observations made by you in the first 2 activities of Part A section of this booklet will also provide you with primary data. Step 3. Create an illustrated seasonal calendar as per the instructions below. Draw concentric circles on a chart paper based on the number of themes you want to show. Divide the whole circle into 6 seasons and write their names. Divide each of the inner circles into 6 parts. Use each of the inner circles for different themes: fruiting and flowering trees, wild edibles consumed, wildlife sighted, etc. Draw the plant or animal species that occur in different seasons. You could also replace the plant drawings by sticking a part of the plant. The third activity is a vision for the future, rich picture. This activity involves developing a shared vision of how students would like their area to be or look like at some future time. This is done through a rich picture which helps us see relationships and connections that we may otherwise miss. Developing a rich picture is a good group exercise as all students can add to it and use it to explain their particular interests or perspectives. A rich picture is best developed in a group of about 4 to 5 people. You will need chart paper, marker pens or sketch pens for this activity. Step 1. Discuss your vision. Based on all the activities you have done so far and the knowledge you have gained by talking to people in your landscape, think of how you would want your area to look in 20 years from now. What are the changes you would like to see? Focus on components you want to include in an ideal world that would promote a good quality of life. Also, think of the components people from your area and those you spoke to wanted to see. Step 2. Draw the rich picture. Take a large piece of chart paper and place it on the table. Each student must stand in such a way that he or she can easily draw on the paper. All students should have a marking pen. Draw all the components that you might want in your area on the chart paper. Be creative and constructive. Use pictures, text, symbols, and icons to graphically illustrate how you would like to see your area. It is everybody's duty to take care that everybody draws. Display the seasonal calendar, historical timeline, and rich picture at your school and make a presentation for your school members. Don't forget to take comments and feedback from the school community. Make sure all the team members get equal opportunity to present and answer questions. Lastly, prepare a project report compiling all the information from historical timeline, seasonal calendar, and rich picture activities. Submit a video clip of the presentation as a reflection of these activities. The training is now complete, and we hope you have enjoyed this second edition of the Wipro Earthian-Sustainability and Biodiversity module. Do not forget to use the checklist at the back of the booklet to make sure that you have completed all the activities. Remember to look around you and bring out the local stories of biodiversity from your neighborhoods. Feel free to go beyond the book, and in case of any queries, do contact us. You can email us at earthian.contact@wipro.com.